says debates don't matter? Hello, everybody, and welcome to a special live edition of Rebel HQ. I'm David Shuster. Good to have you join us. The Republicans' wishful thinking following Donald Trump's disastrous debate the other night has now run into a brick wall known as reality. The latest polling shows that Kamala Harris has widened her lead in the days after the debate. We'll show you some of the numbers. Also, Donald Trump's whoppers are getting more intense and crazier by the day. Donald Trump's running mate, JD Vance, just stepped in it on the economy. We'll show you what he said. You're not going to believe it. Also, we'll have the latest on the Harris-Walz campaign, our video of the week, and our moment of the week. Plus, we're going to take some of your comments. Let's get into them right now. See what we got. Become a member here. That's right. Before we get into the comments, remember, you can become a member of TYT and help us. Go to tyt.com. Also, be sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel. That way the videos are essentially sent to you when you go to the YouTube homepage. And if you want to become a member of TYT, go to the TYT main page. But let's get back into our live stream and let's start. By most accounts, Kamala Harris had the debate performance that she was hoping for, and the principle of cause and effect is going her way. According to the latest Reuters Ipsos poll, which was conducted for 2 days after the debate, Kamala Harris now leads Donald Trump nationally 47-42. That is outside the margin of error of 3. The previous Reuters Ipsos poll had Harris +4, so she's picked up a point after the debate. Also, the polling found that of people who were familiar with the debate, who watched the debate, 53% said that Kamala Harris won. That is very different from what Donald Trump claimed in a series of media appearances and interviews in the hours and days following the debate. Watch.
Come to the spin room.
I just felt I wanted to. I was very happy with the result. We had a 92% rating in one poll.
80-20. I told that to Brett Baer. And so we sent him a lot of polls, and we sent you a lot of polls this morning.
We had an 86% rating, and another we had 77%. 92-7. 92 to 6. 88 to 11. 86-3.
Wow.
I mean,
but every single poll last night had me winning like 90-10.
71% to like 24 or 25%.
Why don't you do a shout-out poll? Who they thought won the debate last night? It would be great.
Polls are indicating that we got 90%, 60%, 72%, 71%, and 89%.
Where are you getting these numbers from?
Where is he getting those numbers from? Where is he getting those numbers from? He is pulling them out of his ass. Seriously, by all accounts, and at least according to all of the reporting, Donald Trump, when he walked off the stage, he was told by his staff, "Oh, great job, boss. You did a terrific job." They were soothing his ego. But then those same Trump advisors went to the media and acknowledged that he had blown it, that he was all over the map, that he had lied repeatedly, that he didn't stay focused on Kamala Harris's record, that he went for the bait that she laid. And so essentially the debate was on her terms. And again, the instant polling found that Donald Trump had lost the debate. And now, several days after the debate, there's a clear impact on the national polling. We mentioned the Reuters Ipsos poll that has Kamala Harris ahead nationally now by 5. Here's some of the other polling. Morning Consult, which was conducted the day after the debate. Harris 50, Donald Trump 45. That's another 5-point difference, and that is outside the poll's margin of error of 3. The New York Post, owned by the Murdoch family, Republicans, Kamala Harris 50, Donald Trump 47. The margin of error in that is 2.7. So again, outside the margin of error. Rasmussen Reports, which was a Republican poll, and this was done actually going into the debate, had Harris 47, Donald Trump 49, but that was within the poll's margin of error of 3. That is the last poll to show Donald Trump winning nationally. And again, a lot of people disregard the Rasmussen Reports poll because it is tended to be, it's run by a Republican organization and tends to be weighted towards Republican voters. In the wake of the debate, and again, Democrats are thrilled. Republicans, if you'll get people from the Trump campaign away from the microphones and off the record, they'll tell you it was a disaster. So naturally, Kamala Harris is asking for a second presidential debate. We'll play you that clip. And also here is what Donald, and at the end of that, we'll play what Donald Trump is saying about that. Watch.
North Carolina, 2 nights ago, Donald Trump and I had our debate. You watched it? Did you watch it? another debate. Right? We owe it to the voters.
So because we've done 2 debates and because they were successful, there will be no third debate.
There will be no third debate. And Donald Trump, of course, is counting the debate with Joe Biden and is suggesting that he's had enough debates with Democrats. But like a lot of things Donald Trump says, I would not take this threat not to have another debate. I would not take that to the bank. And there are a lot of reasons for it. First of all, generally, when somebody is trailing in a political campaign, it behooves them to actually have a debate to try to change the narrative. And plus, Donald Trump still has some opportunities if he does another debate to try to go after some of the things that he didn't go after Kamala Harris in this one. And that is to try to go after things like her flip-flops on policy and so what exactly are her particular policies, and to try to paint this narrative that that hasn't stuck to Kamala Harris, that she is somehow this San Francisco ultra-liberal, fascist, communist, whatever Republicans want to come up with. And again, Donald Trump was not able to even sort of scratch the surface in those efforts at this debate, because he took the bait from Kamala Harris and went after things that were sort of, you know, Donald Trump sort of lies, and she got under his skin, and Donald Trump got defensive about his crowds. So for a number of reasons, I think there will be another presidential debate, even though Donald Trump is saying, oh, no, not right now. And he'll probably have some negotiations with whoever the next broadcaster might be and try to perhaps maybe have the microphones open so that he can interrupt. There's another reason why I think there will also be more presidential debates. And by the way, there is a vice presidential debate that is confirmed that's coming up. But there's the reason that these debates are sort of helpful also to both campaigns is because you can raise a lot of money in the hours and days after the debate. Kamala Harris, for example, in the 24 hours after this presidential debate, she raised $46 million, according to the campaign. That's $46 million on top of the $350 million that she raised in the month of August. And that's money that can be spent on things like advertisements and get out the vote efforts and organization and establishing field offices. So the money is important, and debates are a crucial tool to raising money. And again, simply for strategy reasons, if you are the person who's trailing, it is in your interest to try to reset the narrative, to have a breakthrough moment, to be able to address your opponent face-to-face and break through. Donald Trump can't do that if he does not have another debate. Now, you may be thinking, well, why does Kamala Harris then want to have another debate? Well, she wants to have another debate. And there's some divide here among political strategists about whether she should be asking for another debate or whether she should just take the victory and go home, essentially. But the Harris campaign is convinced that Donald Trump will have another awful performance if there's a second debate, and that Kamala Harris simply outguns him on the debate stage, that she's got more experience, her prosecutor background, she knows how to build the case. And the Harris campaign also thinks that there's an even higher ceiling for Kamala Harris in these debates, and that she was a little nervous at the top, that there were a couple of questions when she was asked about, are Americans better off now than they were 4 years ago? And she essentially dodged the question because she wanted to focus on her talking points. Well, she will only get better, the Harris campaign believes, if there's a second debate. And so they believe her ceiling is even higher. And they think that, again, they can essentially destroy Donald Trump again, bait Donald Trump, get him off of his talking points, and once again show the American people that the more Donald Trump talks, the worse it is for most people who are undecided in this election. So I would look for another presidential debate. Interesting strategy. Normally, the person who's the front runner will say, no, we're not going to have any more debates. We're done. But in this case, everything is sort of thrown out the window. Donald Trump is a unique candidate, and the usual rules of politics do not apply. Let's get to some of your questions and comments. We'll respond to them in real time. Someone should have asked him 17 by 6, says Andrew. I'm not quite sure what that means. This debate was not rigged. Your opponent is supposed to call out lies, and the moderators only fact-check some of the more dangerous lies. I'm surprised they were ready for the cat-eating hoax. I'm not. We're going to get into that in a moment. Usually when you do debate prep as a moderator, you try to imagine what are the 20 or 30 lies that we might hear, and let's make sure we have our facts. So if we need to correct either candidate, we're ready to go. It's easy when you're a debate moderator, and I've been in these situations before. It's easy to predict what a candidate is going to lie about. It's also easy to predict what a candidate is going to tell the truth about. So as a journalist moderating the debate, I'm not surprised at all that the ABC moderators had their information from Springfield, Ohio, ready to go. Donnie was looking for his nanny with the diaper bag and the chicken nugget. Okay. I'd love to see it, but I think he really is delusional about his performance and thinks he is holding the advantage. I agree. I would love to see another debate. Not as if Trump answers any question he is asked. Well, that's another reason the Kamala Harris team wants another debate, because they're convinced that American people see through these. When they see Donald Trump evading questions and going to his narcissistic talking points, it only hurts Donald Trump. Now, let's go to another one. Jorge, she should bait the orange buffoon into a second debate. I think she is. And by the way, by her saying, I'm ready for a second debate, she's showing confidence, saying, hey, let's do another one. Donald Trump is trying to use the analogy of a boxer, that once you have won, the winner doesn't want a rematch. And so that's why Donald Trump is saying, I was the winner because I don't want a rematch. Actually, it doesn't quite work that way in politics. So again, I think she is baiting him by saying, oh, are you chicken? Which is essentially what the Democrats are saying. Is Donald Trump chicken? Is he afraid? So anyway, interesting stuff. All right, let's get into a related topic to all of this. Donald Trump and his campaign are infuriated at ABC News, the moderators of the debate. They believe that ABC should have pushed back more at Kamala Harris's, what they are calling lies, what other people are calling statements that are out of context. And here's an example. Kamala Harris said during the debate that Donald Trump had called neo-Nazis at Charlottesville very fine people. Well, technically she had said there were very fine people on both sides of that. But because Snopes, which is one of these internet fact-checking organizations, had said that that's not technically correct, Donald Trump then jumped on Snopes, the Snopes claim, to suggest that Kamala Harris had delivered a big lie at the debate. Watch this.
People that were...
Hold on, let's go. Let's check this.
She talked about knowing it was all false. She talked about the Charlottesville hoax, and these people did nothing about it, which has been totally debunked, as they say, by Snopes and Snoops and everybody else. And go look it up. Go to Snoops, whatever the hell that is.
You actually can't go to Snoops or Snopes or whatever the hell you want to call it. It's not a website, although they post things in social media and whatnot. It's basically sort of the internet fact-checking to chase down conspiracy theories and determine whether something that's trending on the internet is true or false. Well, what Snopes said is that Donald Trump never said neo-Nazis are very fine people, but that's a matter of sort of context, because Donald Trump, after the rally in Charlottesville by neo-Nazis, Donald Trump said there are very fine people on both sides. One side was the neo-Nazis. The other side, the counter-protesters, were protesting against the neo-Nazis. And I would argue that there were not fine people on the side of the neo-Nazis. And when Donald Trump said there are fine people, he is essentially calling neo-Nazis and the counter-demonstrators very fine people. Well, he shouldn't have done that. He did a moral equivalence. And oh, by the way, a lot of people who are online, a lot of Republicans say, well, Donald Trump never said that. Snopes said he never said that. The problem for a lot of the Republicans who are out there, who are on the Twitterverse and social media and saying, oh, Kamala Harris delivered a whopper, she lied, ABC should have corrected, is because there's actually videotape from when Donald Trump was president saying there were very fine people on both sides. Here's Donald Trump being asked about the violence in Charlottesville, Virginia. And again, a counter-demonstrator was run over and killed. There were people with tiki torches shouting anti-Semitic slogans and racist slogans, neo-Nazi banners. Here's what Donald Trump had to say about it. Watch.
Very fine people on both sides. You had people in that group, excuse me, I saw the same pictures as you did. You had people in that group that were there to protest the taking down of, to them, a very, very important statue and the renaming of a park from Robert E. Lee to another name.
So when Donald Trump says he never said neo-Nazis are very fine people, that's Donald Trump essentially trying to suspend reality. He said there are very fine people on both sides. And for that, people are mad at ABC News because David Muir and Lindsay Davis didn't say, oh, Kamala Harris. No. Donald Trump didn't say Nazis are very fine people. He said there are very fine people on both sides. Well, the ABC moderators probably thought that that would be splitting hairs, that context was irrelevant, that when Donald Trump said there are very fine people on both sides, he was essentially saying the neo-Nazis are very fine people. So ABC News decided not to correct Kamala Harris. I wouldn't have corrected it either. I don't know any broadcast journalist with any integrity, even at Fox News, who would have corrected that. But the Trump folks, MAGA world, is infuriated at ABC News. They should have corrected that. This is MAGA world and the Trump campaign, again, suspending reality, living in their own fantasy world. And by the way, the suspension of reality was evident in huge ways from Donald Trump. Donald Trump said at the debate that because of Democrats, some states allow you to execute babies post-birth as abortions. No state allows that. When you allow a baby to die or kill a baby or a fetus after it has been born, that is murder. It is illegal. No state allows that. But Donald Trump claimed it at the debate. And so ABC News rightfully pushed back and said, no, it is illegal to do that. No state allows that. Oh, Republicans were angry that Donald Trump got corrected. Here's another one. Donald Trump has repeatedly said, and putting aside from the debate, and we're going to get to the Donald Trump saying they're eating dogs in just a second, but Donald Trump has repeatedly said in his speeches that transgender surgery can be performed at schools without parent consent. Watch this.
Gender thing is incredible. Think of it. Your kid goes to school and comes home a few days later with an operation. The school decides what's going to happen with your child. And you know, many of these childs 15 years later say, what the hell happened? Who did this to me? They say, who did this to me?
It's the biggest, because can you imagine your child goes to school and they don't even call you and they change the sex of your child? Think of it.
Think of it. Yeah, when you think about it, if your child went to school and was able to get transgender surgery, maybe say from the school nurse during lunch hour, and there's no parental consent, yeah, that would be terrible. But that's false. That doesn't happen. That doesn't happen at all. There is no school system in the country. There's no state in the United States that enables the scenario Donald Trump is trying to come up with. So when Donald Trump says, oh yeah, parents are losing control, schools have all the control, they can literally hack off the private parts of your kid, and then 15 years later, the kid's like, oh my God, what happened? That doesn't happen. It cannot happen. But in Donald Trump's suspension of reality, in the fantasy world he creates, where he likes to be the hero and he creates the villains, the schools, that's what Donald Trump says. It is an outright lie. And when that gets said at a debate, it should be corrected. Likewise, in the news for several days leading up to the debate, Republicans have been promoting this thing about Haitian immigrants in Springfield, Ohio. And over the past several years, tens of thousands, I think 15,000 Haitian immigrants have moved to Springfield, Ohio, a town of about 60,000. And there have been complaints about infrastructure and social services being overwhelmed. Well, a few weeks ago, Fox News ran a clip of a woman in Ohio, not in Springfield, but 200 miles away, a Black woman who apparently was on drugs, who was arrested for killing and eating a cat. And this video whipped around the internet, and a lot of people in MAGA world said, aha, this is proof that there are Haitians in Ohio who are eating cats and killing cats as part of voodoo. No, this particular clip wasn't in Springfield. It wasn't a Haitian woman. It was a separate incident of a woman who was high on drugs. But this rumor started to build. And between some people in Haiti practicing voodoo, which involves animal sacrifice, rumors started spreading in Springfield that there are people who are stealing dogs and cats and pets and eating them, and that the ducks are being cleaned away from the pond. And there was Charlie Kirk on his podcast saying, oh, yes, there are these stories about ducks and animals being eaten. This took off. And then Senator JD Vance issued a statement saying, well, it might be true. We have to be careful here. This is another reason that we shouldn't have immigrants. Really? The local police weeks ago, before the debate, said they have not received any credible reports or evidence of anybody in the immigrant community illegally eating, killing dogs, cats, household pets. Then the mayor has a statement saying, There have been no credible reports, credible evidence of what these people are claiming, that somehow immigrants are stealing pets and eating dogs and cats. Then the governor of Ohio says there has been no, the governor, by the way, is a Republican. There has been no evidence of people eating pets of immigrants or whatnot. And yet the Trump campaign doubles down on it. It says, oh no, there's some video. We've seen it on TV. We've seen clips of people claiming that this is happening. Well, sure, there have been people who have gone to the city council meeting and who have spoken to reporters and said, yeah, I've heard that those Haitians are eating pets. And yeah, I have a neighbor who says that her dog got lost. Maybe it got eaten. Maybe the dog did get lost. Did it get eaten? Nobody's corroborated that. Nobody's confirmed that. And the fact that people are actually saying, I've heard the rumors, that doesn't make the rumors true. So when Donald Trump at the debate, and again, you have your list as a moderator of all the possible lies and points of contention. When Donald Trump went there and said these immigrants, and we all knew that Donald Trump was going to talk about immigrants, and you can list the 10 or 11 lies that Donald Trump might articulate about immigration and migration at any point if you're a journalist who's worth his salt. This was one of the issues that I'm sure ABC thought, okay, maybe Donald Trump's going to use this Republican talking point about Haitians in Springfield, Ohio. We better be ready. They called the city manager. The city manager said there's no proof, there's no evidence. And so when Donald Trump went there during the debate, ABC News rightfully corrected him. And Donald Trump looked like a fool. Not because of the correction, but because he said, they're eating the cats, they're eating the dogs, which has turned into an internet sensation. We'll get to that later. This is a problem for Donald Trump. And to blame ABC News for Donald Trump's ridiculous claims at the debate, there's an old saying that children are aware of. It goes something like this: winners, keepers, losers, weepers. When you weep about a sporting event or an outcome you don't like, you have lost. Winners walk away and say, yeah, I'm fine with that. I'm sure there were some things that Kamala Harris wishes that ABC might have done a little bit differently. But she's not complaining about it. She's not saying, oh, I could have done even better. So clearly the Trump campaign is admitting by their complaints about ABC News that Donald Trump lost. And right now, Donald Trump and his campaign are pointing to ABC News and suggesting we can't have another debate like this. And you have a lot of people in the conservative media world saying Donald Trump should never go on ABC News again. And Trump is saying that ABC News should fire their anchors and their reporters. Good luck with that. But it's another reason why, the stakes are big in this campaign, because if Donald Trump wins, can you imagine the retribution that a Trump presidency might have, not just against ABC News, but also against CNN and MSNBC and all Donald Trump's perceived enemies? Let's get back to some of your comments. And we're going to bring those up right here. Just have to click. Let's see, what do we got here? People are focusing on the cat and dogs, while Vance's assertions that the Haitians are bringing disease and killing children in car accidents goes uncountered. Well, to your point, it's harder to sort of push back and say they have brought in no disease, they have caused no car accidents, when there are, like anything, anecdotal examples of, yeah, there have been car accidents involving Haitians. There have been car accidents involving a lot of people in Springfield. There are flu and diseases in small towns. And there's probably some in the Haitian community. I agree that I think to generalize and for JD Vance to say, this is another reason to hate migrants, that's despicable and he's being racist. But it's not as easy to push back against that as it is against something so demonstrably true as when you have the city manager saying people are not eating cats and dogs. I saw this. I think that guy might overwork them, though. Loomer is Laura Loomer. Yeah, there are some people who credit Laura or are criticizing Laura Loomer. She's a 9/11 truther, conspiracy nut who's been with Donald Trump by his side for the last apparently several weeks and leading up to the debate. And she was the one who was apparently telling Donald Trump, oh yeah, go for the jugular, be really aggressive about the immigrants and everything else. Well, that backfired. Most Americans didn't like that. So Republicans, including Marjorie Taylor Greene and others, are slamming Laura Loomer and trying to get Trump to ignore her. God in charge, in case you didn't know, he always says he has a plan. I don't think the plan is 2025 now. No. Trump was trying to show dominance during that handshake and Kamala pulled back. She did good. I'm to that point. I kind of wish that when Kamala Harris walked across the stage to give the handshake, I wish she would have done one of these like that, that you do when you're a kid, just to make the other person look like the old Larry Moe and Curly Three Stooges routine. Anyway. All right. Republican vice president candidate. Start this again. Republican vice president. You know what? This is a sign that I need to take a few more comments before I move on. The mayor of Springfield was on TV saying there's nothing like that going on in their town. We knew that. Exactly, Janice. All right, let's talk about the vice presidential candidates. Republican vice presidential candidate JD Vance keeps proving that he is a gaffe machine and underscoring why some people in Trump world are not happy with him, to say the least. Here's what Vance just said about the economy. Watch.
If the path to prosperity was flooding your nation with low-wage immigrants, then Springfield, Ohio would be the most prosperous country and the most prosperous city in the world. America would be the most prosperous country in the world because Kamala Harris has flooded the country with 25 million legal aliens.
Earlier today, I saw that JD Vance went on TV and said that if immigration were part of how countries become prosperous, then, quote, America would be the most prosperous country in the world, which makes me wonder, what country does JD Vance think is the most prosperous country in the world, since he doesn't think it's America? And also, does he really think that immigration has nothing to do with American prosperity? Most Americans disagree. By the way, most Americans also disagree with Donald Trump's decision to kill the bipartisan border bill that Kamala Harris has pledged that she would sign if it came to her. So rather than have us talking about that, he wants us talking about people allegedly eating cats, which is...
So a couple of things there. First of all, Pete Buttigieg is he's phenomenal on TV. He's just sort of great. And he's perhaps one of the best advocates that the Harris-Walz campaign has. Secondly, in any other campaign, if the president or vice presidential candidate had said, as JD Vance did, that we do not have the largest, the biggest, the most successful economy in the world, that would have been front page news for days, and that candidate would have gotten hammered. And JD Vance is getting hammered now, but the fact this isn't a bigger story underscores just how much of a problem Donald Trump is at the top of the ticket. Let's be clear. The U.S. economy remains the biggest in the world. The U.S. economy has had the best growth since COVID, since the pandemic. The United States, in the first 3.5 years of the Biden-Harris administration, created more than 17 million new jobs. By comparison, Donald Trump, in the first 3 years of his administration before the pandemic, created 6.8 million. The stock market has gone up under President Biden, Kamala Harris, by 40%. If you have a 401k or anything in the market, you are thrilled with the U.S. economy. The stock market has gone over 41,000. I mean, the markets are terrific. Inflation has finally dropped. Gross domestic product is up. Unemployment remains low. So by most measures, with the exception of inflation, the U.S. economy is doing really well. Now, for JD Vance to suggest that if immigration were the key to the economy, we'd be, first of all, one of the reasons that economists say that the United States is doing so well is because of all the labor that has entered the workforce over the last 5 to 10 years. Some people credit immigration, the number of people who are coming in to do relative unskilled labor, with a reason that the U.S. economy is doing so well, and that there are people to fill the jobs that are being created in agriculture and manufacturing, and also some of the jobs that a lot of Americans, frankly, don't want to do. So immigration gets some of the credit. It's why when you hear that the United States birth rate is declining, economists fear that because you need a certain number of people in the population in order to sustain the economy and keep it growing. Well, the U.S. is adding to the population through immigration. So you can say everything you want about immigrants, and you can disparage them, as Donald Trump and JD Vance do. And yes, they want to complain about the stress on infrastructure, and JD Vance wants to complain that they're bringing, unfounded, he's saying they're bringing in drugs and disease, and Donald Trump says crime. That is racism. A lot of it is not true. And what is true is that the immigration to the United States is being credited by economists across the spectrum with helping to grow the U.S. economy. And the U.S. economy is the most successful and the strongest in the world. And for JD Vance not to know that is shocking. This is just the latest gaffe that JD Vance has had just in the past week. JD Vance was asked about the Taylor Swift endorsement of Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. And JD Vance responded by saying, Americans are not going to listen to a billionaire celebrity who was out of touch with the interests and needs of the American people. That sounds like he's talking about Donald Trump, a billionaire celebrity who's out of touch, who most Americans probably can't relate to. For JD Vance to disparage, I mean, you can say, hey, I don't think Americans are going to listen to a musician or a pop star or whatever, but to simply call her a billionaire celebrity that is out of touch, JD Vance is undermining and undercutting Donald Trump. There was JD Vance, of course, one on the cats and dogs, despite when it had been proven, when the mayor and city officials had said this is not true, JD Vance said, well, it might be true. The evidence might end up proving that it is true. That reminds me of, remember Vice President Dick Cheney in the run-up to the war in Iraq when there was, allegations of weapons of mass destruction, and there was no concrete evidence. There was some indication, some anecdotal. And Dick Cheney said, well, we can't allow the proof to be in the form of a mushroom cloud. And Dick Cheney cherry-picked intelligence and cherry-picked information to make the case that we needed to go to war with Iraq because Cheney claimed they had weapons of mass destruction and because Cheney suggested that they were tied into 9/11. So we went into war with Iraq. There were no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. Iraq was not connected to 9/11. And yet 4,000 U.S. soldiers were killed. More than 30,000 U.S. soldiers were injured in the war in Iraq. And the United States had to spend $2 trillion because Vice President Cheney cherry-picked information that he wanted and refused to acknowledge the truth. And here we have another vice presidential candidate who says, well, the information might be true. Put aside the ridiculousness of people eating cats and dogs. If that is your approach to an argument, well, the information might be true. It might turn out to support our narrative. That is dangerous. That is how Americans get killed. That is how America wastes trillions of dollars. We cannot go down that path again. There has to be some value to empirical truth. And if you're a presidential candidate or a vice presidential candidate who ignores empirical truth, who ignores reality, and we want that in the White House? No, I don't think so. As for the Democratic vice presidential candidate, Tim Walz, he took what happened at the Trump-Harris debate and he leveraged it in brutal fashion in ridiculing Donald Trump. Watch this.
Kamala Harris was able to, within a matter of a few seconds, use this guy's inflated ego and narcissism to bait him into melting down on a national stage in front of 60 million. You don't think Vladimir Putin could do that? You don't think Xi Jinping could do that? You don't think that folks who are looking to flatter this guy as he shakes down our allies like it's some type of racket operation, rather than standing with our allies?
What's so interesting about that, to say that Xi Jinping, Vladimir Putin, the world's dictators, are going to play Donald Trump because Kamala Harris was able to play him at the debate. It goes in an interesting Democratic strategy, and that is one of Donald Trump's strengths. One of his advantages has been the perception that he is strong, that he is sort of authoritarian, that he's powerful. Some people really like that. Well, part of the challenge in a campaign is to sometimes take a strength or a positive that the other side has and flip it against them. And that's what Tim Walz is doing right there. He's saying the problem with Donald Trump is that, no, he's not strong. He's actually easily manipulated, and he may project this image of being strong. But if Kamala Harris can manipulate him and bait him so easily at the debate and get Donald Trump to say nonsense, well, imagine what Vladimir Putin or Xi Jinping or some of the strong men and women of the world will be able to do to Donald Trump by flattering Donald Trump or by getting under his skin, by manipulating Donald Trump. And that's not a position the United States wants to be in. It is a smart political strategy by Tim Walz to take this perceived advantage of Donald Trump on strength and point out that, no, it's actually a weakness. And this is the sort of thing, sometimes these arguments get lost in the broader political debate over the economy and women's rights and immigration and everything else that are the big issues. But when you look at personal characteristics and you look at trying to sort of flip a perceived strength of one candidate or the other, it can sometimes make a difference even in a minuscule fashion, and in a minuscule fashion in battleground states, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Arizona, Georgia. even if just a few people say, wait a second, that's an interesting point. Maybe maybe there's a disadvantage with Donald Trump. Maybe Donald Trump's emotions, who a lot of people like, are a weakness of him. If some people are now second guessing Donald Trump's strength, and they decide maybe they were leaning Donald Trump, but now they're undecided, or maybe they're leaning to Kamala Harris, that's a win for the Democrats. And it's smart political strategy by the Democrats to sort of go in that direction. And again, we've said it over and over. Keep in mind, this race is going to be decided by tens of thousands of votes in the key battleground states, mostly independent, undecided voters. The polls show that about 15% of the U.S. electorate right now is undecided. What we've seen in the polling over the last several weeks is that the people who are leaning Donald Trump, a significant number of them are moving to undecided. A significant number of undecideds have been moving into lean Kamala Harris. You're not seeing people who are leaning Kamala Harris shifting back towards undecided or towards Donald Trump. And so when people talk about the polling window having changed, yes, there's still a lot of possibility of things going one direction or the other, but the number of people who are undecided, independent voters, voters who are only now paying attention, that window keeps getting smaller and smaller by the day. And the window essentially keeps being framed a little bit closer to the Democrats. So every time they are able to take a Trump supporter and peel them away from Donald Trump, or take somebody who's leaning to Donald Trump because of his strength, and you hear Tim Walz say, no, he's not strong, he's weak, that matters, and it is significant. There are let's get to some of your questions again. Michael, don't know what you're thinking. You really think that Trump will help you? I guess there's a debate going on in our comment section about whether Donald Trump is going to help people or not. Look at what things cost 5 years ago to today. Paul gets to the key point. I'd say the one vulnerability that Democrats have, not one, but I'd say the biggest one, is that when people are asked about your buying power, and how does your buying power now compare to your buying power 4 or 5 years ago, they say it has gotten worse. Even though so many aspects of the economy have gotten better, even though more people are employed than ever, and your 401k, your savings are higher, most Americans, and it's, I would say, largely a perception, because I think if you actually compare your buying power in real economic terms to 5 years ago, yes, some goods have cost more, but Americans are also making more because of wages. But it feels like to a lot of Americans, their buying power has decreased. And a majority of Americans feel that way. Whether the feelings are accurate or not, the feelings are legitimate. And that's a sensitivity that Democrats have to watch out for. And that's one of the things Donald Trump was not able to bring up at the debate. More lies spewing from you. Another debate over Moo Cow. I don't know who Moo Cow is, but he or she has invaded the comment section, and there's a debate going on. I read Trump's game plan is that fight, 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 never admit guilt, always say you won no matter what. Why aren't we talking about this more? He explains so much. Well, we were talking about a little bit at the beginning that Donald Trump, in response to the polls, he created his own polls after the debate to say that he won. And he always does that. He says, I'm always the winner. And I always take care of the villains and the losers. For him, there's never, ever an admission that he could have done better or an admission that he failed. That's just not part of his makeup. And there is, I suppose, a PR strategy to that, to always promoting and showing confidence and giving people confidence in you. I would just suggest that it's often nonsensical and irrational. Okay, let me move this. There is a conspiracy theory going around about the debate the other night involving Kamala Harris and her earrings, or were they really earrings? Well, listening to some Republicans on social media, they are convinced that Kamala Harris had some sort of special earrings that also enabled her strategist to feed her information during the debate so she could do so well. USA Today checked it out, and here's their report. Watch.
Harris wear audio earrings during the debate? A recent Facebook post claims Vice President Kamala Harris was being coached during her debate with former President Donald Trump. The post shows side-by-side photos, one of Harris's left ear and another of a pair of Nova H1 audio earrings, which are earrings that double as wireless communication devices. Using an earpiece to communicate with anyone during the debate would have been a flagrant violation of its rules, which prohibit interactions with campaign staff during commercial breaks. But this claim is false. there is no credible evidence that Harris's earrings contained audio transmitters. The earrings Harris wore on the debate stage featured large pearls with 2 gold stalks that curved behind her earlobes in a J shape. A journalist-run website that tracks the vice president's clothing choices identifies them as a discontinued style from Tiffany & Company that Harris has worn for months.
Those were earrings from Tiffany's. Those were earrings from Tiffany's. Well, upon that news, some people on the right looked up and said, oh, well, these were earrings that cost, is it $8,000, $800, whatever it is. It's more money than most people spend on earrings. So now the argument from MAGA world is Kamala Harris cannot relate, and people should not be able to relate to her because look at her expensive taste in clothing and jewelry. And we've heard this before. She wore a $15,000 necklace at a previous event or when she was doing her acceptance speech. Kamala Harris likes expensive jewelry. She's not like you or I. The problem that the Trump campaign has with this, among others, is that if you look at campaign expenditure reports, the Trump campaign in this campaign has spent $371,000 on Melania Trump's stylist. The person who does the makeup and the hair and the clothing for Melania Trump has been paid by the Trump campaign over $370,000. And yet, day after day, we see Donald Trump, like when he was traveling to Arizona, not traveling with Melania, not taking advantage of her amazing hair and necklaces and earrings and jewelry and clothes and sense of fashion. Donald Trump is traveling solo. So if the Trump campaign wants to get into an argument about who's out of touch and who's in touch, it's kind of like the old, don't throw rocks if you live in a glass house. You're going to complain about Kamala Harris's pricey earrings. Maybe you should put at least Melania Trump out there on the campaign to try to help Donald Trump, or maybe you don't. Maybe you keep her hidden because then people are going to pay attention to how well-dressed and couturied Melania Trump is. And why is the Trump campaign spending $370,000 on a personal stylist for somebody who is not campaigning for Donald Trump, except for her appearance at the convention? I wonder how many donors who have given $5 and $10 to the Trump campaign are happy to have their campaign money spent on somebody who doesn't show up. That doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. The Harris campaign is not spending their money on Kamala Harris's earrings or necklaces. Sure, there's probably a stylist who's helping with wardrobe and makeup and hair, and that's probably costing tens of thousands of dollars. That's a normal expense for Kamala Harris. And for any candidate, Democrat or Republican, it's kind of abnormal to spend so much money on a stylist for somebody who's actually not seeming to be part of the campaign. Let's get to some of your comments. I love the blue hearts and the yellow thumbs up because it reminds me of Maize and Blue. Hail to the victors. That's crazy. I assume you're talking about Melania. Trump to inmate number. Is Trump going to become an inmate? That's an interesting question. We should do a video on that as to what are the chances. I mean, everything's been pushed off until after the election, which was too bad. But Macy's Spirit, you reminded me of Mary Spirit. You reminded me of Donald hitting on Rudy and drag. I, in some ways, I wish I wasn't doing the show live so that I can actually separate myself and watch the arguments you guys are having in the YouTube comment section. Classic. She will get drunk in vodka before entering the casino. I don't know what that's about. Harris and Walz. The most you'll see of Melania right now is in her book. Great point, New Down. All the more reason why Melania should be out there on the campaign in front of the cameras. At the very least, it would help her promote her book. Hearts. Okay. One of my favorite stories of the week. So many of you, well, how do I put this? In Arkansas, MAGA Republicans had a fist fight at a Republican committee meeting. How do I put this? Let me change this. In Arkansas, Republicans in Benton, which is the northwest part of the state, had a fist fight at a senior center over a nose ring. Watch this.
You do not
not threaten her.
Do not threaten her, a woman yells at the big guy.
She got definitely.
Look at me, says the man in pink. In Benton, Arkansas, the Saline County Republicans are about to throw down in a senior. Down goes Bigfoot. Down goes Bigfoot. So what started this? According to the Arkansas Times, nose ring insult launches fist fight at Saline County Republicans meeting. All right, so apparently what happened is the guy who was in the overalls said something to a woman who was speaking from the floor, didn't like what she was saying, criticized her nose ring, said, go polish off your nose ring. And then the shorter guy in pink, who, by the way, loves to weightlift, he approached and tried to get attention from the big guy in the overalls. The big guy in the overalls approaches, and then the short guy reaches up and boom, punches the guy in the face and knocks him out. That doesn't knock him out, but knocks him down. This happened in a senior center. Now, the county Republican committee, they're embarrassed by this, but the guy in the overalls, he apparently is part of the Republican committee. So they issued a statement in support of him saying he was not an aggressor. Just because he's big and said some mean things that somebody didn't like doesn't mean that he deserved to get punched. And he didn't throw the first punch. And then everybody else is looking at this and saying, wait a second, you can't just condemn somebody for having a nose ring and insult them and have F-bombs. And then somebody else steps up and says, hey, stop that. And then you approach them. A lot of people have said this is proof that with the right kind of training, even a short person can take out a big person. Anyway, that's Arkansas. By the way, I worked in Arkansas in the mid-1990s as a reporter in Little Rock for KATV. Benton, Arkansas is beautiful. Arkansas Republicans are perhaps a slightly different breed than you might think for Republicans or virtually anybody else. A number of people commented on this video when we first posted it on Rebel HQ and said, Arkansas Republicans, that's all you need to know. A couple more comments. Let's see. QAnon did this to Republicans. QAnon makes Republicans fight with each other. Look, I think QAnon gets people hyped up, and when people are hyped up, they're more likely to come to fisticuffs. Well, they say the bigger they are, the harder they fall. Way to go. Indeed. I heard that bunch. What is this? Vibes. Trump's speeches remind me of some of the old guys that would get up in the dining room with a captive audience when I worked in the nursing home. That is a great segue to what I want to end this live stream with, and that is we have the internet. We have the internet to thank for keeping all of us in good spirits and laughing heartily. Donald Trump's speech at the, well, let's flip this. Donald Trump's comments at the debate that got the most attention about people eating dogs and cats in Springfield, Ohio, they are going viral all across the internet. And here's perhaps one of the funniest clips that I have seen. Watch.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs. The people that came in, they're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. That is what's happening in this country. And it's a shame.
You know what? Credit to the people who have creativity, like this guy who was doing his dramatic reading in London, I think, and to everybody else who took the soundtrack of Donald Trump and put it to images of their dogs. It has inspired all of us to sort of come up with sort of jokes and memes. And one of the funnier ones that I've seen is, when you combine all of this, as somebody who talked about, this is an interesting day for me and my family because my kids are going to school and they want to get, it seems like they're going to get transgender surgery from the school nurse during lunch hour without any parental consent. And they want to celebrate by going to Ohio where they can eat some fried cat. So we're going to go and we're going to listen to Taylor Swift along the way. And oh, by the way, the entire trip is being paid for by George Soros, who is also funding all of those post-birth abortions for people who give birth to a baby and decide, I don't want this. I want to execute it. That's how absurd this has become. But that's the logical next step for a lot of people if you want to take Donald Trump and JD Vance literally. And thanks to the internet for pointing out the bizarre strangeness of so much of what is in this political campaign. We all talk about sometimes the internet being a cesspool and social media being garbage and people at their worst, but it's also an opportunity for people to connect with their own creativity and the creativity of your fellow citizens who have an amazing ability to make us all laugh. And that'll do it for this edition of Rebel HQ. I want to try to end, if I can, with some. I always try to do this. There is some music that we're allowed to play as we go out. Let's see what this is like. Oh, that's kind of nice. Remember to subscribe on YouTube so the Rebel HQ videos will go right to you when you go to the YouTube homepage. And if you really want to help TYT, become a member, go to tyt.com. There's all kinds of great content that you can't get for free. So tyt.com and hit that subscribe button, become a subscriber of Rebel HQ. On behalf of everybody at Rebel HQ, TYT, and the entire channel, I'm David Shuster. Thanks for watching.